Have you ever had that quiet feeling that something in your life just isn't right, but you can't explain why? Maybe everything looks fine on paper, you've got a job, a place to live, people around you, but deep inside there's a constant pull backward, like an invisible force keeps dragging you into the same mistakes, the same patterns, the same emotional traps. You tell yourself, next time will be different, but it rarely is. And you start to wonder, what if it's not the world that's working against me? What if it's something inside me that I refuse to face? Think about this. How many times have you talked yourself out of opportunities? That promotion you could have gone for but didn't. That relationship you ruined because you got scared. That dream you shelved because you thought, I'm not ready yet. And it's not just laziness or bad timing. It's something deeper. There's a part of you that always shows up when you're about to grow, whispering doubts, stirring fears, reminding you of every past failure until you back away and call it realism. But what if that voice isn't realism? What if it's sabotage? We like to think we're rational beings, in control of our lives, making conscious choices every day. But the truth is, most of our decisions are driven by forces we barely understand. Psychology calls it the unconscious. Carl Jung gave it a more haunting name, the shadow. It's not evil or mystical. It's simply the hidden part of you, the one that holds everything you've tried to ignore, deny, or repress. The anger you were told was ugly. The ambition that someone called arrogant. The desire that made you feel guilty. The sadness you learned to hide because it made others uncomfortable. You didn't destroy these emotions, you just buried them. And now they live in the dark corners of your mind, shaping your reactions, your choices, and even your destiny. You see, the shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it. Quite the opposite, it becomes stronger. Every time you say, I'm fine when you're not, every time you swallow your frustration, every time you pretend not to care, you feed that shadow. It grows silently in the background, waiting for the right moment to take control. And it does, when you lash out at someone you love for no real reason. When you sabotage your own success because deep down, you're afraid of who you'll have to become. When you envy someone's achievements but disguise it as judgment or indifference. The shadow speaks through emotions you don't understand and behaviors you can't explain. Let's get real for a second. How many times have you promised yourself you'd stop repeating a pattern, and yet here you are, doing it again? The toxic partner you swore you'd never date again somehow has a different name but the same energy. The same argument you've had 100 times with your spouse where your boss starts again, almost word for word. You think, why does this keep happening to me? But maybe the better question is, what part of me keeps choosing this? That's what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most people spend their lives blaming fate. They say, I'm just unlucky, or I always attract the wrong people, or this is just how I am. But none of that is true. What's really happening is that the parts of yourself you've denied are calling the shots while you convince yourself you're in control. The shadow hides behind your excuses, your habits, your I don't care attitude. It's the silent puppeteer pulling the strings while you keep dancing to the same song. But here's the twist, the shadow isn't your enemy. It's not trying to ruin you. It's trying to get your attention. It's that part of you that says, hey, I'm still here. You can't ignore me forever. Every time you feel triggered, every time you feel irrationally angry, jealous, ashamed, or afraid, that's not weakness, it's communication. Your shadow is knocking on the door, asking to be seen. And until you open that door, it will keep showing up in more painful and destructive ways. Imagine walking through life carrying a heavy backpack. Inside it are all the emotions you've ever avoided: anger, guilt, fear, envy, pain. You tell yourself it's fine, you're strong, you can handle it. But over the years, that weight breaks your posture, slows your step, drains your energy. You don't even realize how heavy it's become because you've been carrying it so long. Now imagine setting it down, opening it, looking at what's inside without judgment. That's the first step to freedom. But most people never do it because it's uncomfortable. It's much easier to stay busy, blame others, or chase distractions than to face the parts of yourself you don't like. We live in a culture that worships positivity. Think happy thoughts. Focus on the good. And yes, optimism has its place, but constant positivity without self-awareness is just another form of denial. You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Real growth doesn't come from pretending everything's fine. It comes from facing the mess, owning it, and understanding what it's trying to teach you. Because behind every fear is a truth you've been avoiding. Behind every judgment is a reflection of something inside you. And behind every emotional trigger lies a chance to reclaim your power. So the next time you feel like life is repeating itself, stop looking for external enemies. The real challenge isn't out there, it's in here. It's the part of you that hides behind pride, fear, and guilt. The part that wants to stay safe instead of being real. But once you shine a light on it, once you have the courage to say, yes, that's mine, something incredible happens. The shadow loses its power to control you. What once sabotaged you can now strengthen you. What once felt dark becomes a source of insight, creativity, and energy. This invisible force that's been shaping your life, it's not fate, and it's not punishment. It's simply the unclaimed half of who you are. And the moment you decide to stop running from it, everything changes. Because the truth is, freedom isn't found in perfection, it's found in integration. The question is, are you ready to meet the part of yourself that's been waiting in the dark all along? From the moment you were born, the world started teaching you the rules of being acceptable. You didn't choose them, they were handed to you before you even had words to question them. Be a good boy. Don't cry. Don't talk back. Be nice. Don't make a scene. Sounds familiar? These phrases are everywhere, at home, in school, in church, on TV. They sound harmless, even well-intentioned, but what they really do is train you to divide yourself into two halves, the part that's allowed to exist and the part that's not. You learned early which emotions were good and which were bad. Anger was wrong, sadness was weakness, ambition was arrogance. So you learned to hide them. You smiled when you were hurt. You said it's okay when it wasn't. You acted calm when your blood was boiling. Over time, you built a mask, a version of yourself that the world would accept. And every part of you that didn't fit behind that mask got pushed underground, buried deep inside your subconscious. That's how your shadow was born, not as something evil, but as everything you weren't allowed to be. Think about it. When a child throws a tantrum, adults say, "Stop crying." When a child says, "I want to be the best," adults reply, "Don't be so full of yourself." When a child says, "I'm scared," we say, "Don't be weak." Each time, the child learns one lesson: my authentic feelings are not safe here. So they start to hide them. But emotions don't just vanish, they find new ways to survive. Anger turns into passive aggression. Fear turns into control. Ambition turns into jealousy. The shadow is simply your emotional recycling plant. It takes what's been rejected and stores it, waiting for you to deal with it one day. As you grew older, this division only deepened. At work, you learned to be professional, which often meant suppressing your frustration. In relationships, you learned to be nice, which often meant abandoning your own needs. In society, you learned to be positive, which often meant pretending you were fine while quietly falling apart. You thought you were evolving, but in truth, you were editing yourself down, cutting out pieces of your humanity to fit into the script the world handed you. Picture your personality like an iceberg. The visible part, the you that people see, is small. That's your conscious self, polite, logical, socially approved. But below the surface lies a massive structure of emotions, fears, and instincts that you've repressed for decades. That's your shadow. It holds your untamed impulses, your shame, your hidden desires, your creativity, and your pain. It's the part of you that still remembers what it feels like to be fully alive, but you've locked it away to look normal. The irony? That hidden mass is what truly drives you. Let's be honest, how often do you find yourself reacting to things and later thinking, "Why did I say that? Why did I do that?" That's the shadow at work. You think you're in control, but the parts of you that were never accepted are still pulling the strings from below. The more you deny them, the louder they whisper. And sometimes, they don't whisper, they scream. They surface in the form of burnout, resentment, jealousy, overreactions, and self-doubt. Take envy, for example. Nobody likes to admit they're envious. So when you see someone succeed, you roll your eyes and say, they got lucky, or they're not even that good. But deep down, it's not about them, it's about you. It's about the ambition you buried because someone once told you it was ugly to want too much. Or think about anger. You've probably been told to control your temper. So instead of expressing it in healthy ways, you swallow it. But swallowed anger doesn't disappear, it festers. It becomes stress, sarcasm, bitterness. One day, it explodes at the wrong person, and you tell yourself, that wasn't me. But it was the part of you you've been ignoring for years. This is the tragedy of modern life. We confuse repression with maturity. We believe that to be civilized, we must amputate everything raw, emotional, and instinctual. But what if maturity isn't about suppression, it's about integration? What if real strength is being able to feel your emotions without being ruled by them? The shadow isn't some dark monster hiding inside you. It's the child who was told to be quiet. The dreamer who was told to be realistic. The rebel who was told to behave. Every don't you've ever heard created a piece of it. And while you've spent years running from it, the shadow never stopped running after you. It wants recognition. It wants to be brought back into balance. Because you can't be whole if half of you is locked in the basement. If you ever wonder why you feel disconnected, unfulfilled, or off, it's because the parts of you that could make you feel alive are buried under the weight of social conditioning. You were trained to survive, not to be real. And survival mode is not the same as living. You can't keep pretending that the mask is who you are. Eventually, it cracks. Eventually, the emotions you've buried demand to be felt. That's the moment of truth, the point where most people either shut down again or begin the journey back to themselves. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You can meditate all you want, repeat affirmations all day, but until you face what you've buried, you'll stay divided inside. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It's here to reunite you. To remind you of what you sacrificed to fit in. To show you that the parts you call flaws might actually be your greatest sources of power. Your anger can become your voice. Your jealousy can reveal your true desires. Your fear can turn into intuition. Every emotion you've rejected holds energy, and when you stop repressing it, that energy becomes fuel for growth. So the next time you feel something uncomfortable rising within you, don't rush to silence it. Ask what it's trying to tell you. Because that discomfort is not your enemy. It's the language of your shadow, the part of you that's been waiting all your life to be seen, heard, and finally accepted. Now that you know how the shadow is born, let's talk about how it takes control. Because knowing that you have a shadow isn't enough, you have to see how it moves, how it acts, how it manipulates you from behind the curtain. And here's the uncomfortable truth, the shadow doesn't attack you like an enemy. It doesn't shout, it doesn't warn you, it doesn't show up wearing a villain's face. It works silently, through your habits, your emotions, your reactions. It hides in your logic, disguises itself as reason, and convinces you that you're making your own choices, when in reality, you're just repeating the same unconscious script you wrote years ago. Let's start with projection. You've done it, I've done it, everyone has. It's when you see something in someone else that you refuse to see in yourself. Have you ever met a person who instantly irritated you? You can't explain why, but something about them just gets under your skin. Maybe they're too confident, too outspoken, too demanding. And you tell yourself, I just don't like that kind of person. But pause and look deeper. What if what really bothers you is that they're expressing something you've buried inside yourself? The ambition you were told was selfish. The confidence you were shamed for. The assertiveness you were punished for showing as a kid. That irritation isn't random, it's a signal. The shadow speaks through judgment. What we hate in others often reveals what we've denied in ourselves. Then there's self-sabotage, the shadow's favorite trick. Think about how many times you've been on the verge of something great and then somehow, everything falls apart. You miss the deadline. You forget the meeting. You get sick right before the opportunity. It feels like bad luck, but it's not luck, it's your unconscious pulling the emergency brake. The shadow doesn't want change because change threatens the identity it's built around your wounds. If, deep down, you've always believed you're not good enough, then success feels dangerous. It challenges the story you've lived by. So you unconsciously ruin your own chances to stay in the familiar pain. You tell yourself, see? I knew it wouldn't work. But it's not fate, it's fear disguised as failure. And the shadow doesn't stop there. It creeps into your relationships, turning them into mirrors that reflect the parts of you you'd rather not see. Have you noticed how people often attract the same kind of partner again and again, the one who criticizes, ignores, manipulates, or leaves? It's not coincidence. It's the psyche's attempt to replay an old wound until you finally heal it. If you grew up feeling unseen, you might unconsciously choose partners who keep you invisible, just to confirm the belief that you don't matter. If you learned that love must be earned, you'll chase people who make you prove your worth over and over. The shadow creates these patterns because pain, even when it hurts, feels familiar, and the familiar feels safe. You might think, that's not me. I'm not controlled by my past. But look closer. How do you react when someone disrespects you? Do you speak up or freeze? How do you handle conflict? Do you confront it or avoid it at all costs? Every automatic reaction you have is a fingerprint of your shadow. It's not just emotions, it's your defense mechanisms, your excuses, your "that's just who I am." No, that's not who you are. That's who you became to survive. The shadow also distorts your perception of reality. It filters what you see so that the world always confirms your inner narrative. If you believe people can't be trusted, you'll subconsciously look for betrayal and overlook loyalty. If you believe you're unlovable, you'll misinterpret kindness as pity and push it away. You'll keep collecting evidence for a story that hurts you, because deep down, that story feels like home. That's how powerful the shadow is. It doesn't need to fight you, it just convinces you that you're right about your limitations. Another way it works is through emotional hijacking. Ever snapped at someone over something small and then thought, where did that come from? That's your shadow surfacing. It's the buried anger or fear from years ago, finally exploding through the cracks. You think it's about the spilled coffee or the late text, but it's not. It's about every time you had to swallow your feelings and smile. Every time you wanted to scream but stayed silent. The shadow remembers what you tried to forget, and it waits for a trigger to remind you it's still there. But here's the catch, the shadow isn't always destructive. Its goal isn't to ruin you, it's to get your attention. Every self-sabotage, every emotional breakdown, every repeated pattern is a message, look at what you've been avoiding. The problem is, we keep treating the symptom instead of listening to the signal. We go to therapy to manage stress instead of asking why we're addicted to overworking. We blame our partners instead of asking why we tolerate disrespect. We keep running, and the shadow keeps chasing. You see, the mind doesn't care about comfort, it cares about wholeness. It will keep recreating pain until you finally face its source. That's why life feels like déjà vu sometimes, the same argument, the same disappointment, the same heartbreak. The details change, but the energy is the same. Because until you confront the part of you that keeps attracting it, the lesson repeats. So ask yourself, what patterns keep showing up in your life no matter how much you try to change? What emotions do you keep running from? What kind of people do you keep choosing, even when you know better? These aren't coincidences, they're clues. Every frustration, every failure, every fear points back to your shadow, waiting to be seen. And here's the good news, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Awareness breaks the spell. When you catch yourself projecting, you pause. When you notice self-sabotage, you choose differently. When you feel the old wound stirring, you breathe instead of react. That's how you take your power back, not by fighting the shadow, but by understanding it. The shadow's control ends the moment you turn the light of awareness toward it. It thrives in denial, but it shrinks in honesty. And that's the beginning of freedom, the point where you stop being a puppet of your unconscious mind and start becoming the author of your own story. Because the truth is, what once controlled you is nothing compared to what happens when you finally take control of yourself. The shadow you ignore doesn't just sit quietly in a corner, it grows. It collects everything you've repressed, every emotion you've silenced, every truth you've avoided. And the longer you deny it, the stronger it becomes. At first, it shows up subtly, a bit of frustration here, a strange anxiety there. You think you're just tired or stressed. But over time, the pressure builds, and what you've buried starts to leak through the cracks. That's when the explosions happen, the outbursts you can't control, the breakdowns you didn't see coming, the emptiness that won't go away no matter how much you distract yourself. This is the cost of denial. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you refuse to look at it. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes all your energy to keep it down, and the moment you lose focus, it bursts back up, hitting you in the face. Every suppressed emotion eventually finds its way to the surface, often in the most destructive ways possible. Repressed anger becomes chronic irritation or even physical illness. Repressed sadness turns into depression. Repressed desire morphs into addiction or obsession. You think you're controlling your darkness, but really, it's controlling you. We live in a society that rewards repression. Be strong, they say. Stay positive. But what they really mean is don't make anyone uncomfortable. And so, people learn to wear smiles like armor, pretending everything's fine while quietly falling apart inside. But the human psyche has limits. You can only fake peace for so long before the cracks start showing. Eventually, your shadow doesn't ask for your attention, it demands it. Through burnout, anxiety, panic attacks, failed relationships, or that haunting feeling that your life has lost meaning. Have you ever met someone who's constantly angry, always blaming others, always playing the victim? They're not evil. They're just consumed by their unacknowledged shadow. They've denied their pain for so long that it's taken over their personality. Every interaction becomes a battlefield because they're fighting a war within themselves. Or maybe you know someone who seems numb, no excitement, no sadness, just flat. That's not peace. That's emotional shutdown. That's what happens when you repress so much that you can't feel anything anymore. Ignoring your shadow also damages your relationships. When you bury your wounds, you project them onto the people closest to you. You accuse your partner of being controlling when, deep down, you're terrified of losing control yourself. You resent your friend's success because it reminds you of the ambitions you gave up. You push people away because intimacy threatens to expose the parts of you you've been hiding. The shadow isolates you not by building walls around you, but by convincing you that everyone else is the problem. And here's the cruel irony, everything you try to avoid by denying your shadow eventually becomes your reality. You hide your anger to keep people from leaving, but they leave anyway because your suppressed emotions make you distant. You bury your fear of failure to appear confident, but that fear quietly sabotages every risk you take. You repress your pain to stay strong, but the weight of unprocessed grief eventually breaks you. The more you run from your shadow, the more it shapes the life you're trying to escape. Sometimes, the denial goes so deep that people forget who they really are. They become a collection of roles, masks, and performances. They confuse their identity with their survival strategy. You hear them say things like, "That's just how I am," or "I don't care anymore." But beneath those words is exhaustion, the fatigue of living disconnected from the truth. They've spent so long pretending that their own reflection feels like a stranger. This is what Jung called depersonalization, when the split between your outer self and your inner truth becomes so wide that you start to feel hollow. I've seen people chase every possible distraction to avoid facing themselves. They drown in work, drink, food, scrolling, shopping, anything to fill the silence. But no matter how fast they run, their shadow follows. You can't outwork, outdrink, or outrun what lives inside you. The shadow will always find a way to be seen. It might show up as an argument you can't explain, a health issue that doctors can't fix, or a deep loneliness even when you're surrounded by people. The body keeps the score. The mind keeps the memory. Nothing truly disappears, it just waits. So let me be clear, facing your shadow isn't optional. It's inevitable. The only question is whether you'll do it willingly or whether life will force you to. Because life has a way of pushing us into situations where we have no choice but to confront ourselves. The breakup that shatters your ego. The job loss that destroys your illusion of control. The health scare that strips away your denial. Those moments feel like punishment, but they're invitations. Invitations to stop pretending, to stop running, to finally listen. You see, pain isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. Pain is the messenger that says, something inside you needs attention. But when you silence that messenger, the message doesn't go away, it just grows louder. Eventually, it starts screaming. The breakdown, the crisis, the meltdown, it's not the end of your life. It's your shadow banging on the door, begging you to stop ignoring it. And if you can find the courage to open that door, you'll realize it wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to set you free. The cost of denial is high. It steals your peace, your authenticity, your joy. But the moment you decide to face your shadow, something shifts. The chaos starts to make sense. The pain starts to have purpose. And the darkness that once terrified you becomes the raw material for your transformation. Because, in truth, the most dangerous thing you can do isn't to face your shadow, it's to pretend it isn't there. Now that you understand what happens when you ignore your shadow, let's talk about what happens when you finally decide to face it. Because this is where the real transformation begins, not when you run from your darkness, but when you turn around, look it in the eye, and realize that it's not your enemy. Integration is the process of reclaiming everything you once rejected, the anger, the fear, the envy, the desires, and turning that raw energy into power. It's not about becoming perfect or enlightened. It's about becoming whole. The first step is awareness. You can't change what you refuse to see. Start by noticing what triggers you. Those moments when your emotions flare up for no clear reason, when someone's confidence annoys you, or when a colleague's success makes you uneasy. Stop and ask, what does this say about me? Not in a self-blaming way, but with curiosity. Maybe that arrogant person isn't arrogant at all, maybe they're expressing a confidence you've buried. Maybe that envy you feel isn't something to be ashamed of, it's a signal, pointing you toward what you really want but haven't allowed yourself to pursue. Every trigger is a mirror. The world reflects the parts of you you've disowned. The second step is acceptance. You have to allow yourself to feel what you've spent years avoiding. Anger, jealousy, sadness, shame, they're not signs of weakness. They're messengers. When you stop fighting them, you start hearing what they've been trying to tell you. You don't need to act on them or let them control you, but you do need to let them exist. Sit with your emotions instead of numbing them. Feel the heat of anger in your chest, the weight of grief in your throat, the discomfort of envy, and instead of labeling them as bad, ask what they're protecting or revealing. Every emotion carries wisdom if you're brave enough to listen. A powerful tool for this work is writing. Get a notebook, and don't hold back. Write about the parts of yourself you hide from others, the ones you're ashamed of or afraid of. Ask yourself, what do I judge most harshly in others? What qualities do I wish I had? What am I terrified people might discover about me? Let it all out. Don't try to sound smart or spiritual. Be raw, be messy, be real. Because every word you write down brings your unconscious into the light. And what you bring into the light loses its power to control you. Another technique that Jung himself used was what he called active imagination. It's a form of dialogue with your shadow. Close your eyes and visualize that part of you you've always ignored. What does it look like? How does it sound? If it could speak, what would it say? Maybe it's angry at being buried. Maybe it just wants to be acknowledged. Ask it what it needs. You might be surprised at how compassionate that part of you actually is. The shadow isn't some monster waiting to destroy you, it's often just the parts of you that never got love. When you listen to them, they calm down. When you accept them, they transform. Here's something most people don't realize: every so-called negative emotion contains a gift. Anger becomes strength when you learn to channel it. Fear becomes intuition when you understand its purpose. Desire becomes creativity when you stop judging it. Even guilt can become a compass that guides you back to integrity. The goal isn't to eliminate these emotions, but to learn how to use them consciously. The energy that once caused chaos can now fuel your growth. That's what integration really means: transforming raw instinct into conscious choice. But let's be real, this work isn't easy. The ego hates it. It wants to stay comfortable, to keep pretending everything's fine. Facing your shadow feels like walking through fire. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, and sometimes it's painful. But what's waiting on the other side of that fire is freedom, the kind of freedom that can't be faked. The moment you stop running from yourself, you stop being a slave to your past. You stop repeating patterns. You stop attracting the same pain over and over. Because the moment you see the shadow clearly, you take back the steering wheel of your life. When you start integrating your shadow, people around you will notice. You'll react differently. The same things that used to trigger you won't have the same power. You'll stop wasting energy pretending to be good and start being authentic. That authenticity will scare some people. They'll call you selfish, arrogant, or changed. But that's because they're still fighting their own shadows. Don't let their discomfort pull you back into your old patterns. Remember, healing isn't about being liked. It's about being real. You'll also start to discover parts of yourself that you didn't even know were missing. Your creativity will return. Your intuition will sharpen. You'll feel more grounded, more connected, more alive. The same emotions that once scared you will now guide you. You'll realize that there's incredible power in being fully human and allowing yourself to be both light and dark, strong and vulnerable, kind and fierce. That balance is what real self-mastery looks like. Here's the truth most people avoid: you can't love yourself selectively. You can't say, "I love my confidence, but not my anger. I love my kindness, but not my jealousy." Self-love without self-honesty is just another illusion. To truly love yourself, you have to love your shadow too. Not because it's perfect, but because it's part of you. And when you accept all of yourself, the parts that shine and the parts that hide, you become unstoppable. So, start small. The next time you feel a strong emotion, don't push it away. Observe it. Ask what it's trying to teach you. The next time you catch yourself judging someone, pause and ask, "Is there a piece of me reflected here?" The next time you feel fear holding you back, thank it for trying to protect you, and then move forward anyway. That's integration in action. You don't conquer the shadow by fighting it. You conquer it by making peace with it. And when you do, you realize something powerful: that darkness you've been so afraid of, it was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to make you whole. Because the parts of you you've been running from aren't your weakness, they're your potential, waiting to be reclaimed. At this point, you already know what the shadow is, how it's born, how it manipulates you, and how to integrate it. But now comes the hardest part, the one thing that separates those who truly transform from those who stay trapped in the same cycles forever. Courage. Because facing your shadow takes guts. Most people never do it. Most people spend their whole lives pretending they're fine, clinging to the illusion of control, and blaming the world for their pain. They scroll, they work, they distract themselves, and they call it living. But deep down, they know they're hiding. The truth is, self-awareness is not for the faint of heart. It's not glamorous. It doesn't give you quick dopamine hits or easy answers. It strips away your illusions one by one until all that's left is the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. And for many, that's too much to handle. But you've come this far because something inside you refuses to keep pretending. Maybe you're tired of the same patterns. Maybe you're done being the victim of your own story. Maybe you've reached that quiet point where comfort just doesn't feel like peace anymore. That's the call of your soul. It's saying, wake up. And waking up means breaking the pact you made with denial. It means admitting that your pain, your triggers, your failures, they're not accidents. They're teachers. Every disappointment you've faced wasn't punishment, it was a mirror, showing you where you've been asleep. Most people never wake up because it's easier to keep blaming someone else. It's easier to say, my parents messed me up, or my ex destroyed me, or life's unfair. And sure, maybe those things happened. But the moment you start seeing yourself as powerless, you give your shadow the keys to your life. You surrender your agency. You stay small. The truth is, you can't change what's been done to you, but you can change what it does to you. That's the difference between staying a victim and becoming free. The journey of integration is a rebellion against passivity. It's refusing to let your past dictate your future. It's taking responsibility, not as blame, but as power. Because responsibility literally means the ability to respond. And when you stop running from your shadow, you regain that ability. You stop reacting automatically and start choosing consciously. You stop living on autopilot. That's where real freedom begins. But let me be honest, it's lonely at first. When you start facing your inner truth, you'll see that not everyone wants to join you there. Some people will call you too intense, too deep, or too serious. They'll say, why can't you just move on? They say that because your courage threatens their comfort. When you start seeing your own darkness, you also start seeing theirs, and not everyone is ready for that mirror. But don't let that discourage you. Growth requires solitude. Healing requires boundaries. There's a reason Jesus went into the desert, Buddha sat under the tree, and every hero spends time alone before returning to the world. You can't meet your real self surrounded by noise. And once you meet that self, really meet them, you realize something profound: you've never actually been broken. You were just divided. The shadow isn't your flaw, it's your missing piece. The moment you integrate it, your power returns. You start to feel a sense of calm that no external success can give you. You stop chasing validation because you no longer need to prove you're good enough. You already are. You always were. You just needed to remember. But don't romanticize this journey. There will be days when you feel lost, when you question everything, when you want to go back to the comfort of ignorance. That's normal. Healing isn't linear. You'll make progress, then slip back into old patterns, and that's okay. The difference now is awareness. Every time you fall, you'll recognize what's happening faster. Every time you regress, you'll rise wiser. The point isn't perfection, it's persistence. And here's something few people tell you: the shadow never fully disappears. It stays with you, but not as an enemy, as a guide. It reminds you that you're human. It keeps you humble, compassionate, and awake. Integration doesn't mean becoming pure. It means embracing your complexity. Light without darkness is meaningless. Courage without fear is empty. Strength without vulnerability isn't real. The goal is not to eliminate your shadow, it's to walk hand in hand with it. So let me ask you, what will you do with what you've learned? Will you go back to your routines, scroll your feed, and pretend this didn't stir something inside you? Or will you start the real work, the kind that doesn't just change your habits, but your entire way of being? Because awareness without action is just another form of escape. The world doesn't need more people who understand psychology. It needs people who live it, who are honest enough to face their darkness and brave enough to transform it. Maybe that person is you. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe life led you to this message not by accident, but because you're ready to stop living half a life. Ready to stop being divided between who you pretend to be and who you truly are. Ready to stop waiting for someone else to save you. No therapist, no partner, no guru can integrate your shadow for you. They can point the way, but you're the one who has to walk it. So here's your choice: stay asleep and keep repeating the same stories, or wake up and rewrite them. It won't be easy. But freedom never is. Because freedom isn't about escaping the dark. It's about owning it. It's about standing in the middle of your contradictions and saying, yes, this is me, all of it. That's where real power lies. Not in denial, not in perfection, but in truth. So if you take one thing from this journey, let it be this: your shadow isn't the enemy. It's the key. It's the part of you that's been waiting in the dark, holding the pieces of your soul you thought you had lost. When you finally turn toward it, you stop being afraid of yourself, and that's when everything changes. Because in the end, the light you've been chasing your whole life was never out there. It was always hidden within the darkness you refused to face. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below. I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.